Hey Star Wars fans, welcome to the latest episode of the Star Wars Fanpedia Community Showcase. I'm Brandon Ray, I'm the founder of Fanpedia, and today I'm joined by two admins from Wookiepeedia. We have Steven, otherwise known as RiffSiphon1024, and he's the co-founder of Wookiepeedia. And we also have Britt Roth, otherwise known as Track Nar, a Wookiepeedia admin. And today we're going to be talking about this expanded universe, which is also called the EU. And that's all the Star Wars stories that take place in books and comics and games. So let's get right to it. I'm going to be asking these guys a couple questions, and we hope you enjoy it. To start off with, I kind of wanted to get your opinion on this because I think it's an interesting topic. Other franchises, they also have their own expanded universes. I know Star Trek does, Halo does, lots of things do. But none of them seem to be quite as popular as Star Wars, which has a lot of books that go onto the New York Times bestsellers list all the time. What do you think it is about Star Wars that draws people to these non-film or non-television stories?
Well, Brandon, I think it's because of how much continuity there is out there. We're talking about an entire galaxy of material with which to draw information from. And when you don't have conflicts in an environment like that, that allows for greater storytelling, that allows for more locations and more places to go, and makes Star Wars that much more desirable as a result. I mean, if we look at the beginning all the way to the end of what timeline's been presented, it's roughly 37,000 years of material to work with. So there's plenty of area to go, and it could basically go on forever if you consider how many stories can be produced for each amount of time and each location that's being told about.
Britt, what do you think? What is it about the EU that's so interesting to you?
I think it's more of just people wanting to relive the films, relive different aspects of it, find out little backstories about their favorite characters, because that's what drew me to the EU, because we'd have characters who were on screen for like at most 30 seconds, and then they would have half of a book devoted to them. Because I got started with the Tales anthologies, and personally I think they need to make more of those because those are really awesome, and it was a good way to get people into the EU.
For people who don't know, what are the Tales anthologies?
Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, Tales of the Bounty Hunters, and Tales from Jabba's Palace.
Okay. And those basically tell little character stories and things like that?
Yep, just an anthology of short stories about various characters who had all of 3 seconds of screen time.
This question's for both of you. Was there a specific EU story that drew you? Obviously, Track said Tales, so I guess this is just for Steven. Was there a specific EU story that really drew you into it, that made you want to read more?
Well, I mean, I haven't been as strong into EU novelizations and so much as I had been into the video games and some of the other, TV series, things like that. Clone Wars has opened up the door for a lot of backstories, though. Although I do kind of like the Black Fleet Crisis series. And still getting into the Legacy series. Legacy really is a strong point for me because there is a whole new area with which to create characters for. And I mean, just within one comic, we're introduced to like 20 or 30 new characters, and eventually they all come back together at some point. I think that era is the strongest for me.
For the reasons why people seem to gravitate towards the EU. For the EU that's set specifically after Return of the Jedi, do you think part of it's because no one really ever expected to see a sequel trilogy, so the EU was really the only place where you could see further adventures of Han and Luke and Leia and all your original trilogy characters?
That sounds about right. That seems like that was also one of the draws for some of the people that I know, is that they can continue the movies through the books or their own fan fiction, which a lot of people do.
Right.
Well, I mean, and the way I see it is that we just were unsure of whether or not we were actually going to have additional movies. It had been rumored for years that Lucas was going to have 7, 8, 9, and potentially even 10, 11, 12. And so those may still potentially be on the back burner given the situation of things now, the way he's handed everything over. But for the time being, at least when the 90s are coming out, yes, Star Wars was a little, shall I say, dead. It was before the prequels started up, so you had Timothy Zahn coming in there. You had all these new books. You had Shadows of the Empire to fill in the gap between 5 and 6. And Shadows of the Empire was like one of those big introductions to the EU for me as well, because I got to see Prince Zishor for the first time in a video game magazine. And it just opened up a whole new understanding of what the galaxy was all about. So yeah, they're necessary, but they weren't the only means. At least, time pending. I mean, we had a feeling that we knew we were going to go back as soon as Lucas said Episode 4. You had to have 1 to 3. And now that we have 7, 8, and 9, it just seems that everything is now being tied together as more of a complete universe instead of just simply making it up out of thin air.
You mentioned a complete universe. A lot of fans like to treat the expanded universe as one long, happy continuity. But as we know, there are different levels of canon. Like the movies and TV are of a higher level of importance than the books. So I think that kind of brings us to the elephants in the room. We have the sequel trilogy on the horizon. We have a bunch of spin-off films, and those will be set probably around 40 years after Return of the Jedi, where there's already a lot of established expanded universe between that and the end of Episode 6. So with these new films, with 7, 8, 9, do you think that they're going to ignore the EU stories that are set after Return of the Jedi in favor of a completely original story?
Well, I think that it's going to be a very small window depending on what characters show up. And as I talked to you earlier about, as soon as we see the announcement of Chewbacca, this will be the nail in the coffin, if you will, for what we consider continuity after Episode 6. Spoiler alert, hopefully Star Wars fans know that Chewbacca was killed off in 25 years after the Battle of Yavin. If that character enters back into the fold, there has to be a really good reason for him to be there around 40 years after Yavin, or we're going to have a mess to deal with. In either case, we would still have to treat the continuity as such, because it is a higher continuity than the book canon, which that character was killed off in.
We've already had similar instances with the Clone Wars TV show in which a character was killed off in the novels, and then before their death in the EU, he was killed off in the show, which made his death in the novels completely moot, and now we have one giant snarl we're still trying to deal with. And then there's Greedo.
What is it with Greedo? What happened with him?
His entire backstory was negated in a span of 10 minutes.
What happened? Can you go into detail on that for those who don't know?
Well, in the EU, Greedo had a somewhat tragic backstory in Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, and it was considered to be one of the better stories of the book, and showed him, and it detailed his childhood being part of a persecuted clan from Rhodia, and he ends up orphaned on Nar Shaddaa, and then finally taken under the wing of another bounty hunter. So inexperienced 19-year-old Greedo goes up against Han Solo and well, we all know what happens to Greedo then. But in Phantom Menace, there was a deleted scene where young Anakin was fighting with a young Greedo, and for a time, that younger Greedo was retconned to be Greedo's father. And then the episode Sphere of Influence came around.
That's from the Clone Wars?
Oh, yes. Oh. And it said, oh no, that Greedo who was on Tatooine, that was the Greedo. So he was in his 40s and he was just a hard luck bounty hunter whenever he croaked.
But he shot first.
Yes. Needless to say, a lot of people were not very happy.
So obviously it sounds like we have some strong opinions here, so that leads into my next question. I already asked, will they ignore the expanded universe for the new movies? So should it? Do you think it should?
I don't know is the best question, best answer I can give to that. But we do know that they are interested in hiring Han, Luke, and Leia back, and given their ages, would fit in with the timeline of around 40 to 45 years after Yavin, or ABY. So far, it seems really good in the direction that we're going, that they may be outside of what's already been established. But beyond that, we just need more details.
Yeah, that. I'm hoping that they don't ignore the EU, but it's Hollywood.
Let me ask this. I'll frame it in a kind of a different way. If they do set it after the current expanded universe, so as to not ignore it, there's 4 decades worth of backstory there. You know, there's only one solo child left. Luke has a son. There were major wars, major villains. 2 solo children were killed. Chewbacca was killed. That in and of itself could probably fill 2 hours just explaining that with exposition. So how would you want to see them handle dealing with all of that backstory without bogging the new audiences down in all this EU minutia?
Summarize it in an opening crawl and go from there, and drop little bits of exposition where appropriate.
I think it's possible to still get by with that, but remember that we went right into episode 1 without having any backstory too. And yes, the opening crawl provides us the background that we need to begin that story. If we just run with that, I think we can still be okay. But a lot of things have happened. If someone really wants to find out about the nitty-gritty details, yes, they'll have to go back and read those materials, or Wikipedia, perhaps. But nice little bug there. But you could probably make it work, I think, if you have that opening crawl. The opening crawl has already been a long time deal with the Star Wars universe anyway, and it gives you that backstory. We didn't have that with episode 4 either. We didn't know what these things were going on. These robots in space and all these princesses and dark lords. Like, what's going on? My mind's going to explode. But everybody enjoyed it. So episode 7 is no different, really.
Well, let me put it to you like this, because I mean, to give you my opinion, I'll cross over from host into dissent a little bit. I'd consider a lot of that story to be baggage on a film. Like, you have the emotional turmoil that stays with you forever. Like Han and Leia, they're going to have that emotional turmoil forever about 2 of their kids dying, both of their sons. One was a Sith Lord, and that was a major event. The Jedi were exiled or Luke Skywalker, rather, was exiled from the Republic for a little bit. There's a galactic alliance that replaced a new Republic. Do you think it's possible to really honor all of that expanded universe information within the span of that just couple hours when there's just so much of it? Like, it doesn't fit into 3 sentences in an opening crawl.
We could just say the galaxy's messed up.
Done.
Hey, we got to start from square one all over again. Oh, by the way, there's that one Sith just crawling in the shadows. They won't come out for another 100 years, so don't worry about them.
So if they do end up ignoring the post-Return of the Jedi expanded universe, they'll probably start writing a new one to fill in the gaps between Jedi and Episode 7. So as EU experts who are known for documenting everything about that canon, if you could give Lucasfilm any advice about starting a whole new expanded universe, what would you tell them from your experiences reading the current one?
Thrawn. Do Thrawn, and people will be happy.
What do you think, Britt?
Approach the same things, but from a different perspective. There's plenty. You can still rewrite the story with a fresh set of eyes, and it will be a whole new story.
So if I could give an example, and I have to say spoiler alert here, just in case you haven't seen the movie.
Spoilers!
The latest Star Trek movie, Star Trek Into Darkness.
Well, we all did, right?
Yeah, I hope so. the villain of that movie was Khan. You know, Khan was in the original Star Trek series. He was in The Wrath of Khan. So this was a new spin on the character. Are you saying something like that, where they bring back some of these similar stories but tell them in a different way?
But the thing... Oh, go ahead, Britt. I'll follow up on you.
I was more of saying like it's the same story but seen from a different perspective by a different group of people. What's going on in the fringe? What's going on on the fringe of either alliance? How are they perceiving all of this? What's going on with the common man?
So like Heir to the Empire, but from the perspective of the average Joe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've tried doing that with other media as well. Instead of being in the thick of things, the new Legacy series actually picks up with just a scavenger, with just like a junkyard person on the side of things. And, oh, by the way, they're related to the Solo family. But they're outside of the whole mess of everything that's going on with the Skywalkers, with the Sith and everything. And it's a new take. And just to add on to the Star Trek thing, I have to actually give them credit for reinventing the wheel because of the whole time travel situation. You've essentially hit restart on that entire universe, which allows you to go in different directions that wouldn't be possible if you were still within that within that universe. And now we're in a parallel universe or an alternate universe created by the events of Spock from the first film. So you can actually blame Leonard Nimoy for all of that.
I'm sure there are fans who do that. Probably more so J.J. Abrams, but I'm sure there are.
And J.J. Abrams is the master of the universe now because he controls everything.
Yeah, really. Except for the Avengers.
He is the uber nerd. Okay, so it's Josh Whedon versus J.J. Abrams.
Of course.
Ultimate death battle.
So
Epic rap battle of
history or nerddom.
Nerddom. You have to throw Will Wheaton in there too.
Yes.
Of course, you always have.
Sorry, we're getting off topic here. So.
I think it was Britt. You mentioned Star Wars Rebels earlier, so that show is on the horizon now, and we can probably assume that they'll be writing a bit of the canon between episodes 3 and 4. Steven said to me earlier, correctly, that there's not much there, but there are stories there, and that reminds me a bit of the Clone Wars, which, as you said, changed certain facts from the rest of the EU, like a character dying in the show, who was then in a novel after the show and also died in that novel. So we've always seen that there are certain fans who, and not to be divisive or anything, there are certain fans who don't take kindly to that. Like, it's a big deal when a fact like that is changed. They don't like that. So even something as simple as like Anakin having an apprentice, because it was never mentioned in Revenge of the Sith. So why do you think it's a big deal to fans when a fact from a book is ignored or replaced by one from a movie or a show?
Well, it's because that was what they read, what they believed, and what they, for lack of a better term, held dear. That's what they knew, and then to see the show just completely disregard it just smacks of incompetence or laziness, general bad writing, or even the directors just being mean, like, oh, your little novel universe, it doesn't mean anything. We can do what we want because we are G-canon.
So you mentioned that they might think like, oh, it doesn't mean anything. I know I've seen people, if the EU after Return of the Jedi is ignored, I know there are people who feel like that's ruining the expanded universe, it's taking something away from their enjoyment. So I guess my question to that would be, if the books are still there, if you can still read them, if you can still enjoy them, but they're in a separate chronology, for lack of a better term, what's the big deal? Like, I'm not somebody who's that invested in the EU canon, so I want to understand that.
Well, it's basically saying, I mean, you're reading it and realizing that it's all untrue.
From a certain point of view, though, right? I mean,
Oh.
I mean, I hate to pull that card, but since it would technically be in a separate chronology and not just like completely excised from the face of the planet, it can still be true in a way, can it? You can just view it as a different chronology. Like if I was to say it like this, we have the latest James Bond movies, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and Skyfall. Those were reboots. They all went into a separate chronology from the first 20. But the first 20 are all still there. You can still enjoy them and things like that.
But James Bond's also a special character in that he continues to redevelop himself. 007 can be any character, actually. Can be any person to pick up the role of that.
Right, like Star Wars fans, though, there are people who didn't like the fact that it was rebooted. It was considered one long, weird chronology.
But when you use major characters for the sake of using major characters and just saying fan service, oh, hey, we're going to put them in here because they should show up. There's a huge universe. There's a quadrillion beings they could pick from. It's then those little things where you're focusing in on something that you want to showcase and then changing the background unnecessarily. Or it could have just been anybody else. It didn't have to be Jabba. It didn't have to be Greedo. It could have been any one of those other Hutts or Rodians or whatever. But that's where fans tend to be a little more pointed. It's like, oh, they showed up. Well, then the universe really isn't as big as we thought it is it?
So, unless Brett, did you have anything to say before I moved on?
I actually totally forgot what I was going to say.
Okay.
But Steven covered it, so it doesn't matter.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
My question about that would be, obviously, if I was making the movie, I'd be saying, in order to open it up to the largest audience possible, let's start fresh, let's put the EU into a separate chronology. So for a Star Wars fan who's invested into the expanded universe, if J.J. Abrams or Kathleen Kennedy or whoever was to say, we're moving that in a separate chronology to appeal to the most people possible, would you feel you're being cheated for the sake of other people?
Slightly. Well, yes, because us EU fans, we hate change.
I think that's true for most people on the internet.
It still won't remove the fact that Empire Strikes Back is the greatest movie ever.
Of course.
Yes.
Nothing can ruin that.
No,
unless they go back in time and reboot it.
Unless they reboot Empire, then you will incur the wrath of the internet and then some. But as long as that's left alone, everybody can be happy and go on with their lives. This is fiction after all.
Yes.
We're just nerds. We're focusing on the little things. What are we doing with our lives?
Now to storm Lucasfilm, we know where they live.
Well, we have been
with
there,
our
yes.
torches and pitchforks. Angry nerd mob.
So you mentioned a minute ago, Stephen, something I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
You said that if reusing the same characters, Luke, Han, and Leia, is basically fan service when there's a whole universe. But outside of the episodes, which have always been focused on the Skywalkers, we also know that they're going to be doing spin-off movies. Now, the big rumor so far are Han Solo and Boba Fett probably to use known characters to open that universe. But after that, they may do original stuff. I would imagine I can't see them passing up the opportunity to like do the origins of the Jedi or something like that. So I guess my question to you, if they didn't do an original story for something with those, and should they adapt a story that's already been written, which would you rather see? Would you want to see an adaptation? Do you want to see something new?
Well, adaptation should only be attempted if they can stay truthful to the original source material. I would rather see them go in a new direction, or if they have an existing character like Boba Fett or Han that doesn't have that much information on backstory given to them already, then they can go in there and add what they need to. Again, this ties into the period between episodes 3 and 4, where you have a bunch of unknowns and have been deliberately held off because of future projects. Like there was supposed to be a Princess Leia novel that was going to come out, but that was halted because Lucasfilm had something in store for that. So those things, there's still room for certain areas, but in the end part of continuity, at least in the 30 and 40 ABY range, yes, we've restricted ourselves because of all these other things that have happened in that gap. Had Episode 7 occurred right after Episode 6, we wouldn't be talking about any of this.
Right.
If Episode 7 came out in 1990 or something, then we could have moved right on. But then where would have 1, 2, and 3 gone? That continuity might have been changed because of it too. So we were working backwards before we went forwards.
So what do you think? What do you think, Britt?
It just started raining really hard outside. Anyway, pretty much what I'm worried about is them bleeding the franchise dry, or just something having the public just be oversaturated with Star Wars. Because there's talks with ABC about getting a live-action Star Wars series, and all I can think of when it comes to ABC is, oh god, it's going to be a sitcom.
No, because look, they have the Avengers are going to be on ABC, right? It's a Disney product, so they already have the rights in order to air it on there.
Yeah, they'll have Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this fall.
Well, then maybe it's not going to be a sitcom, but I'm just still worried because I'm just not sure about. They're trying to stretch a franchise over such a wide range. I'm worried they're going to end up bleeding it dry. It's going to become so. I mean, we're going to be turning around like Star Wars everywhere. It was. And while on one hand that may be great, on the other, yeah, well, I'm just afraid that since we'll be so oversaturated with it, that it'll lose its meaning. It'll just become just marketing, just commercialism, and it'll be, let's churn out some books for a quick buck. Let's churn out some episodes for a quick buck. Let's churn out this for a quick buck. That it'll become sterile and manufactured.
Oversaturation, I would say that's a problem in anything, but I think a good example to look at for how to do it well might be the Marvel movies. I mean, we've had 7 of those so far.
Within the cinematic universe.
In the cinematic universe, we've had 7 of those movies so far, and 6 and 7 both made over $1 billion. That was the Avengers and Iron Man 3. So I think the trick is probably to keep making it good, to keep making it interesting, and not rehashing the same thing over and over, which to me, it felt like the expanded universe was starting to do a little bit, like Jason Solo's Fall to the Dark Side felt way too much like Darth Vader and things like that. But I don't know, I think if they can keep it new and interesting, then oversaturation probably isn't a big deal, as long as they know when to end it. Like you said, You don't want them to just start churning it out like a lot of TV seasons start to do.
Yes, and I mean, they're doing a good job with the Marvel Universe. If they go that direction, I think they'll be okay. But as a child of the late 80s, early 90s, and having seen all the Disney sequels to various Disney movies,
those are the direct-to-videos. They don't count anyway.
I still have some bad memories, though. I'm hoping that they learned from those mistakes.
So, I have a question about a Boba Fett movie. This is probably the single most important question you can ask any fan about Boba Fett. Should we have a movie set before Return of the Jedi or after and have him escape from the Sarlacc pit?
Ooh. You want to take this one, Britt, first?
Wow, No, you can.
Okay. I'll add my little 2 cents here. First off, yeah, Boba Fett escaping the Sarlacc is cool, but it's not the only thing he did, right? There's just one element. Of course, we could throw it in there maybe as a flashback or something. Everybody wants to see the innards of a Sarlacc. That's great. But he has a lot of backstory already built into the EU up to 40 ABY as well. Again, when it comes to Boba Fett, I think, even pre-Episode 4 would be the best place for him. They've already focused on him a lot as a character in Clone Wars. Why not just continue that up into Episode 4?
That sounds like it may be the best route to go. And yeah, throw in some Sarlacc guts because people want to see that, but otherwise,
you can never have too much blood and violence.
Yeah.
Throw that in towards the end. Go for it. People love Sarlacc guts.
So I guess the next question I have, it's the second to last question I have, gets into a little bit of speculation and minutia, but it's about Wookiepeedia. I'm interested, and I think people who are Wookiepeedia fans might be interested in how you think, and obviously this is just your opinion, so you don't have a policy about it yet, but how do you think Wikipedia will choose to handle documenting two separate chronologies if it is clear that the EU is something totally separate from the new movies?
Britt?
Well, I think it may just come down to attaching a template to certain articles, or actually taking certain sections of articles and saying this happens in an alternate timeline. It may just come down to just doing it lip service like that. Don't have a policy, haven't really talked about policy. I should bring that up, though I don't want to.
It may be a knee-jerk reaction for us if it happens to be a conflicting situation. I mean, we do already have templates for cut content, violating content, and other sources of areas of articles that would just be here's canon, here's non-canon. So we could work around it like that, because a lot of the main characters have already been established. If any canon is going to be violated like that, I don't think we'd produce separate articles for separate continuities. That would have people going in two different directions, and we don't necessarily need that. We want to make sure that one article encapsulates everything about a character or a location or what have you. So one-stop shop basically that a person can go to. I think that's still going to be the way we need to go forward with this. But right now, yeah, no policy has really been put in place for large-scale canonical violations.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting to see what you guys end up doing about that. So my last question, if you had to choose one expanded universe story to be adapted into a movie or a TV show, which one would you choose, and why would you choose that?
Death Troopers.
Oh my God.
Death Troopers, you
said? Zombies plus Stormtroopers is a very...
Yes. Death Troopers.
I'm actually have to agree with that one.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a good idea.
Maybe a live-action version of Force Unleashed, but I know that game has already had a lot of background and motion capture, so it looks very cinematic to begin with. But yeah, there's just more things in the Imperial era that I would like to see, because we don't get to see the oppression of the Empire on individual planets. The Gorman Massacre is one of those things that is yet to be physically depicted. I want to see a ship smashing a whole bunch of dissenters. Crushing them, smushing them. I'm being very violent today, yes. But that is one thing from 18 BBY that we have not seen, but is constantly being talked about. And that could be a story about Grand Moff Tarkin. How did Tarkin become the sinister person that he became by Episode 4? Initially he was working with the Republic, which became the Galactic Empire, and then he was ruthless. Then he was, he's destroying planets. He's destroying Alderaan in Episode 4. So how did he get to that point? I think Tarkin would be a great character to expand on within this Imperial era.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
So yes, more smushing.
So I think I could definitely get behind Death Troopers. I think Star Wars plus zombies would be a $2 billion movie.
Oh, heck yes.
I'd support that.
Yeah.
Joe Schreiber would like it too.
Oh, yes. And I could get him to do more signings in Gettysburg.
So I think unless you guys have anything else to add, that about wraps it up.
Well, I think that's everything. Thank you very much, Brandon.
All right, thank you. I want to thank you, Stephen. I want to thank you, Britt, for joining me today. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next episode of the Star Wars Fanpedia Showcase. So have a good one.
Later, guys.
Bye.